I can take a stand. I need to know I'm not alone.
Welcome and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Anthony Beverly. I'm with Stop the Violence Indianapolis, an organization that was founded here in Indianapolis back in '06. And today we're going to be discussing or interviewing a young man here in the city of Indianapolis that have overcome a lot of barriers, and now he's a single father. His name is Donnell Roby. And Donnell, would you like to share anything to get us started here?
Yes, first of all, thank you for having me. I have a lot to share, but I would like to thank you for this opportunity because I believe that a lot of the youth really need someone who has been in their position and of understanding so that they can have goals to step towards and just understand that there is something better out there and not to lose hope.
Right. Well, Donnell and I, we met back in August of this year, and I saw this young man, and I thought it was something very special about him. And just the other day, we had the opportunity to sit down and talk and get to know him a little bit better. And when he began to share his story, I was very intrigued by the vigor that he has to keep on pressing on through a lot of different issues that he's dealt with. So my first question for you, Donnell, is, share with us your childhood. I mean, what was that like?
Well, first of all, I actually come from a good family with an okay background, but most importantly, they taught me well, they taught me right. God was definitely a part of the household and family. But like everyone, we all have choices. Mm-hmm. And I unfortunately took a lot of wrong choices. Mm. And due to that, it led me into a whole lot of things that I was warned about. If mm-hmm. you take this path, this could happen, this will happen. And I was a little stubborn and thought that I could...
So talk about some of those paths that you took.
Well, first of all, drugs. I was taught all about them and not to get into them, but I was so curious and I got into them. Mm-hmm. Street violence, not coming home at curfew, just the simple things that you're taught as a child when you get into close to your teenage years, your adolescence. I just chose to rebel because I was so curious and I thought that it was fun.
Right. So you had the opportunity to make right choices, but you made some of the wrong choices. And so as a result of that, what did you land?
Ooh, a lot of juvenile, a lot of punishment, a lot of avoidance, people judging me. Even when I tried to say I'm not really that person, they said, oh, well, yes, you are, because your record shows it. Mm-hmm. It put me into a place where I felt like I couldn't be anybody but the person that they were labeling me as. Mm. And I just stayed down that path. Kind of got the idea, well, if this is who I am, if this is who y'all think I am, then I'm going to be that person.
Yeah, so that person, who was that person at that time?
Very aggressive, violent. I seem to not care. I've always cared, but I seem to not care. I didn't show a lot of respect. I had my boundaries, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of things that I did not do that I was against, but there are a lot of things that I should not have done. Stuff like, gang activity, drugs, constantly being suspended from school. My number one thing was fighting, mm-hmm. Being disrespectful towards people verbally and spiritually. Mm-hmm. Just a wild child, basically.
Right. Now, one last question in this area. When we talked the other day, you said that there was, going through this process, that there was something that woke you up. And you were in juvenile at the time, and you had turned 16. Talk to us about that situation.
Well, it was my 16th birthday. I was in boys' school, and I was in there for a period of 2 years. And I called home to my mom, and I was happy. And she was confused.
Now,
And
you were in boys' school.
I was in boys' school, yeah.
Okay.
Called home to my mom, and I was happy. And she thought something had happened to me, you know, like a mental issue. And I was like, no, Mom, I'm completely sane. I'm happy that I'm here. And I said, I never told you, but for 2 years straight, I had a dream that I was going to die on my 16th birthday, you know, and I'm alive. And I'm not going to die in here. Nothing wrong is happening.
Right.
And I was just blessed that I was still alive. And at that point, that was my turnaround of hope. Because a lot of times, I would say between the ages of 14 and 16 is when I was at my worst, because I didn't think I was going to be alive anyway.
Right.
So I was living like I wanted to die.
And we see that a lot with our youth today. So now you are in your 40s.
Yes, sir. 42.
And now that change happened when you were 16. Talk about the process that in that change.
Well, even though the change was in my heart, I couldn't quite figure out how to create the path, or didn't know where to turn to have the path to walk down. So I still had my issues in trying to correct everything, and it got better, but I didn't really see a good turnaround until like 7-8 years later, after later on going to jail and to prison for some of the same things that I was doing as a juvenile. But I started meeting people and opening up myself to meeting different types of people, not just, you know, people that could relate to me, people in the neighborhood, gang banging and stealing and robbing and drinking when they're not even of age yet. Started socializing with people who were in different, you know, aspects of life, who had different mindsets. And that's how I started seeing more opportunities, realizing that I don't only have to turn to those in my position of understanding, but that others also can understand, even though they haven't been in my position.
Right. So then you had children.
Well, right before I had children, my ex-wife, at the time my fiance, it was like the moment she got pregnant and I knew I had a child on the way, something happened. She had a craving. And we went to address that craving 2:30 in the morning at a Buffalo Wild Wings, and this disrespectful guy came and approached us, and I wanted to handle him. You know, I wanted to be 14 again and just go on and beat him up, you know. And she said, no, let me handle this. I'm grown, you know, and eventually I let her handle it. And 3 minutes later, I realized that he's gone, the situation's handled. And I jumped up with joy and actually literally patted myself on the back, and I said, I did it. And she said, are you okay? What did you do? I said, I finally thought before I reacted. And that was my problem as a child. I just wouldn't think. And by the time you think about it, it's too late. You've already done it. So I would say that understanding that I have children coming, you know, I didn't want them to face my troubles, and I felt like I could be a good leader to them. And if I get myself in trouble, I wouldn't be available for them. So
would you say having the children kind of solidified or helped make the change more concrete?
Having children, to put it in different words, having children made me a better person.
Okay.
Made me a different man.
So now that you are who you are now, and you've made the change, and you're a single father, correct?
Yes, sir.
Raising how many children?
Raising 2.
2 children as a single father.
Yes, sir.
And what would you say to other youth that are out there? And I want you to look directly into that camera and just share. What would you say to other youth that are now 13, 14 years old, or even in some cases younger, walking that path that you took?
I would like to tell all the youth to have the understanding that sometimes the person that you would like to turn to, those that you look up to, sometimes they don't have the answer. Sometimes they're not available, but that does not mean they're the only ones that can provide you assistance. You don't have to turn to, you know, what people consider low lives or low standards. You know, you're not minimized just because you've gotten yourself into trouble. You're not limited. you'd have the same opportunities as everyone else, and it's okay to, I guess, disregard what your friends and your peers think about you. You know, if you want to step out of that box and better yourself, you know, in other words, you want to graduate, you want to educate, you want to elevate, and it's okay to step out of that box, even if you're alone for a while, because eventually you'll get into a new box of those who are trying to, as well themselves, elevate and educate, and they will help you along the way.
Well, Danielle, we really appreciate this time. Thank you for coming on with us today. I pray God's success and Godspeed in what you're doing, and thank you for the passion that you have for our community as well.
And thank you, Anthony. I really appreciate this opportunity. It's something that I've really been seeking out for the longest, and I didn't even approach you with it, and it just landed in my lap, and I'm glad to have this opportunity.
Thank you for joining us for this interview with Danielle. Our hope is that we can continue doing this work and working with young men like Danielle Roby, that we can begin to show that they're human beings and they have wills, they have goals, they have aspirations, and it's up to us to draw out of them their God-given talent. So I hope that you will continue to tune in with us as we go down this path to bringing young men back to their place with God, with community, and with family. Thank you.